Hello, everybody, and welcome. I just got hit in the face with a fake snowball by my son. Welcome to episode 9
That was really funny.
of You Gotta Hear This. I am joined today by Mike Monzetta,
Thank you so much. Glad to be here.
Joe Boynton,
Hello.
Greg G-Man Urquhart.
Hi. That's a sad tree.
It is. You got a sad tree behind you. And we have a very special guest today, our friend Shamus Coneys.
How y'all
Welcome,
doing?
Shamus.
It's a pleasure to be here. I celebrate your entire catalogs.
Oh, thank you.
Very happy to have you here. What is your favorite episode? Do you have a favorite past episode?
Great
And
question.
do you have any picks?
I like the perfect catalog one because of its absurdity, because it's impossible.
Mhm.
What would your pick be if you found yourself on a perfect catalog podcast via happenstance? What would your pick be?
I don't know, man. I think Joe and I were talking about it a couple weeks ago, right, Joe? I think I might have said the Beatles, Bob Marley, possibly Death Cab, but there's holes in all those theories, so I didn't commit to anything.
That's
And
why we only have you on this one episode.
yeah, and then of course with hip hop, I mean, I think Outkast has a perfect catalog. So like Tribe Called Quest and Outkast probably has the perfect catalog, but I definitely was thinking more, rock genre when it was brought up. So
Yeah, you had a lot of honorable mentions. Cure was in there. Yep.
yeah, The Cure was one of mine for sure. Queensryche.
Queensryche?
I'm just kidding.
What if somebody on Joe's
Okay.
Instagram said Blind Melon?
Yeah.
Perfect.
One album.
I think they have one album, right? Yeah.
Actually, you know what? Spoiler alert, teaser. I'm going to reference Blind Melon later on my pick. So there you go. There's a teaser.
If you want to sleep all day.
To make sure you stay tuned more than the average 13 minutes that everybody else is. So,
Do you read a book to stay awake, Mike?
I do. Well, my life is pretty plain.
Yeah.
That's all you can say.
That's all you can say. No, thanks a lot, y'all. This is a cool podcast. I like it a lot.
Yeah,
We appreciate when our special guests actually listen to our episodes.
Yeah.
Yeah, I've listened to every single one. As a matter of fact, a few weeks ago, I had to drive to New York City and back pretty much all at once. So at the time, you had 3 episodes, and I had listened to all 3 of them for the first time in the car. So
That's a good way to kill a few hours.
yeah, thanks for keeping me company,
Yeah.
and we actually invented a new group text for this called Your Charlotte Friends Podcast About Music, including Shamus, but make sure Adam doesn't hear about it. We're so lucky to have you here today.
Yeah, I know. It's like
that was a lot. It was a big character count. It was a lot to type in.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
I
Really
think
roll off the tongue.
Adam and I were discussing starting a podcast about wrestling from the 80s. Not invite Mike, baby.
Yeah.
It's all good. It's all good. If we were left out of the text group, we'd definitely be left out of the podcast. So
That's the idea.
that's the idea.
Good point.
It's all good. I'm a firm supporter, so it's all good. I love the show.
Whenever I want to know about music, especially hip hop, I tend to lean on you more so than anybody else.
Well, because I'm old, Greg.
Yeah, well, sure.
Yeah, no, I feel
I've
like
had a long time to listen to all the hip hop.
All of it. See, I would like to know, like, where
Every
do you see Beastie Boys as perfect discography?
I think it's way up there, actually. They evolve so much, even though you kind of, you pigeonhole them into that same sound, but in reality, they got better and better at production and then live instrumentation, and they always had like one of the sickest DJs who, you know, in that scene come make records with them. So their quality is just way up there with me. I think top 10 catalogs of all time, in like not of all music, but like of consistent quality.
I
Like,
agree.
if you love them, you love them, and
Right.
if you don't like them, you don't like them. But you know, you could say that about a lot of bands. So
Yeah, I
Well,
totally agree. Like I
There's
said
not a lot
the
of
exact
middle
same.
ground with them.
Oh, sorry. Go ahead.
I was just saying, yeah, I agree. I don't think there's a lot of middle ground with the Beastie Boys. I think some of it has to do with their voices, though.
well,
There's
it's
a little-
Ad Rock's voice. It's more
yeah,
eh.
a little bit grating. You either like it or you hate it, kind of.
Yeah, but they were funky, and like the wordplay and the exchange of words was, you know, was just Run DMC did it really well, going back and forth, and then when you added a third person to do that, it's almost like, you know, it takes a lot of skill to pull that off.
Yeah.
So
Cool.
Yeah.
yeah,
Let's kick it off.
So should we get to our topic? So
Yeah,
also a little bit of background. We have all been friends with Shamus for going on, well, for me at like 10 years or so. For you guys, probably more, some of you, right?
Yeah,
We actually found G-Dog before we were friends one day.
yeah. I
Yeah.
think Greg and I met first out of this particular group, and then we lived on the same street for a long time too. Me and Greg
That's
have been
right across
neighbors on 2 occasions. Yeah.
I am actually Shamus's illegitimate child, which adds a little sense of awkwardness to this episode.
Mike.
Oh, and this is the first time Shamus is finding that out. Assuming he didn't watch yesterday's episode of Maury.
Is that what this envelope is that you sent me?
Yeah, that was that text that I just sent you.
Yeah.
Yeah. So what's the topic today, John? Why don't you
So the
tell-
topic, I think, if I'm not mistaken, was inspired by you. I think it was discussed a few weeks ago or more. The idea was the greatest American rock band of all time.
Yeah, that's a tall order. I mean, there's so
It
many
is.
great bands to choose from. America's proudly produced a lot of great bands.
Yeah. Now, and this is a little bit of a tough one, in my opinion. A lot of the topics we've done, I'll kind of look at what some consensuses are, at least when it's something, you know, like best albums. I couldn't find any articles written about greatest songs by a wrestler to get a consensus on that. But I have looked at, you know, kind of what the music criticism world says. And this one, when I would look at lists, it was all over the place. There was no consensus. I think every top 10 list I looked at for best American rock bands was different. There wasn't one.
Yep.
Same.
So it's definitely up for a lot of debate.
The beauty of that answer when you Google it is the age of all the people writing the articles.
That makes a difference.
It
Yeah,
does,
that's going to
because
be.
I think on paper there could be winners and losers, but you can't replace like the sentimental value of a band and when you discovered them. So that, I think that plays a part in a lot of these lists. So
You get some 20-year-old making a list, they haven't even been able to like listen to Guns N' Roses or
yep.
Leonard Skinner or the Eagles.
No, never. Yep. Unless, you know, or they haven't discovered it yet. You
Right,
know?
correct.
Yeah.
Yeah, this
Until
goes
like
back to
Kanye remixes or samples it.
Yep.
it goes
Lady
back.
Gaga is the best American artist.
Yeah. It was a story I told on an early episode where I was talking to some guys about 10 years younger than me. And I said, who was the defining band of your generation or the defining songwriter? And they're like, no question, John Mayer. I'm like, what? John Mayer? But they said it with such conviction.
Yeah.
And then what did Gerg say?
Wasn't that guy?
He loves John Mayer.
He's
Really?
talented as hell. I mean,
Yeah,
he
he's
really
very
is.
talented. But
I've never bought any of his music, but I think he's hilarious and as a person, and he's interesting. But you know, his growl and his voice, I'd rather hear him play guitar. And you know, he's on tour with Grateful Dead for the last few years. So to even fill those shoes is admirable. So
Yeah, that's crazy.
that's crazy to be able to go up there and like sound like you are in Grateful Dead with the members of the Grateful Dead.
Right.
Like,
Yeah.
another amazing rock band from America.
I guess we'll find out. I was wondering if anybody was going to go that route.
Well, let's get into it. Let's
Yeah.
get into it.
Mike,
Good.
maybe.
You
Let's
wanna
go,
Kick it
man.
off.
Kick this off. And I got to tell you, man, this is the most excited I've been about a show topic. This is the most.
More than wrestlers?
I know.
Songs by
Come
wrestlers?
on.
More than wrestlers. I feel like my
Wow.
gimmick has been I talk more about the events surrounding the band in my personal life than I do about the band. But I feel like this is the first episode where I'm actually going to passionately disclose an argument for this band being the best American band. And I know we had a lot of discussion about the what's the word I'm looking for?
I don't know. If you say Red Hot Chili Peppers, I'm gonna...
No,
You're
okay.
off the podcast.
We had a lot of discussion
Avocado.
about what is the criteria. How do we
Right,
define
criteria.
best American band? And I feel like in doing so, I don't think we ever really landed on anything. So I decided to define my own criteria. And I think a lot of the hang up was on the word best. And I decided to shift it a
Not
little
the best. It's the greatest.
Great. Hey, man, fuck you. Great.
Hey, man, those are two different words. Like my favorite basketball player isn't the best player of all time.
No, that's the point. But best and it's not favorite. Best and greatest mean the same thing. Shamus is like, it's not the greatest. It's the number one. Like, oh, you got me. You got me on that.
LeBron's the best, but Michael's the greatest.
Okay, we'll get to you later. But that's a great point. You bring up a great point. I feel like a lot of people, and when I say a lot of people, I'm pointing at you are focused on that word, the best. And I kind of shifted a little. And I want to put the focus on the word American, because I think that's where the signifier lies. And this band probably isn't the best band. And I'm sure there's a lot of bands that you guys are going to discuss that are better than this band. But I want to focus on the word American. And what is America if not excessive? We're over the top. We have way more resources than we need, and loud, not only in volume, but in braggadociousness. We can't stop talking about how great we are, and we want to make sure that the whole world knows how great we are. We're very, very loud. We're very, very boisterous. We're very, very braggadocious. And I feel like no other band represents America better than Guns N' Roses.
Oh.
From
I had a feeling you were going there.
From 87 to 1992, Guns N' Roses was absolutely unstoppable. I would call, and just a side note, I want to say that Sweet Child of Mine is the greatest hard rock song ever recorded. Number 2 is Metallica's One, but Sweet Child of Mine is the greatest rock song ever recorded. And they even have a Modest Mouse time change midway in the song. Where do we go? And a little trivia about that is that's a legitimate question. When they were recording the song, I think John is shaking his head like he knows this, but when they were recording the song, Axl Rose was asking the band, like, where do we go from here? And they just left it in, where do we go? And so that became part of the song. Well, if you look at I'm trying to look like I'm coming up with this on the top of my head, but I've got it all written down. So if you look at their peers at the time, so the number 2 peer to Guns N' Roses' Appetite for Destruction was Bon Jovi, Slippery When Wet, who was a fantastic rock band in the respect that they were very pop friendly. They were a band that everybody could get into. And Bon Jovi was talking about things like, we got to hold on to what we got. It doesn't make a difference if we make it or not. We've got each other. And that's a lot for love. We'll give it a shot. And Guns N' Roses, whose album Earth Suit, did I say that word right? Bon Jovi in Sales was like, your daddy works in porno. Now that mama's not around, he used to love his heroin, but now he's underground. And they sold more albums than Bon Jovi did. And
Debauchery.
That was amazing.
when I was coming up with this list, I was thinking it was between Guns N' Roses or Metallica for Best America's Band. And I would say that Metallica is probably a better band than Guns N' Roses. I think they have a longer, they have more longevity than Guns N' Roses. And I think they have a lot of songs that I personally like more. But what Metallica was not able to do was go mainstream in the early years.
Yeah.
Guns N' Roses unapologetically, like the verse I just sang, they're talking about your mom works in porno, and then she had her heroin. They did a whole song about heroin called Mr. Brownstone. They didn't have to alter their style, but they still went mainstream and sold millions and millions and millions of albums, whereas Metallica might have been a better band. And I like a lot of Metallica's songs better. And I think they had a lot more longevity. But again, that goes into the criteria of how do we measure this. And I just think Guns N' Roses was able to stay true to themselves and still break through into that mainstream demographic. So then the question comes up is, so like, why didn't I say that in the perfect catalog episode? Why did I go with Nirvana? And I think the ultimate irony is that Nirvana was the band that dethroned Guns N' Roses as the world's premier band. But I don't think Nirvana is a good band. I think Nirvana is a terrible band. I just think they were putting out I said this in the Nirvana episode, but they were putting out records that were so on brand for them that no other band has ever done. And it was just something that the people needed to hear at that time. But I just don't think they're a great band. But I think Guns N' Roses kind of fill those shoes. And I think, and then once you get past Appetite for Destruction, once you get into 1992, when they put out Use Your Illusion 1, Use Your Illusion 2, they had the song on the Terminator soundtrack. They were just, you can't even begin to describe how much of a juggernaut they were going through America in 1992. They were the biggest thing going. I'm going to check my notes here. I'm really glad I have in my notes, sing My Michelle. So I covered that. But even Poison. Okay, so here's another thing. Fans, you are in for a treat because I'm probably going to sing another song. But even Poison had a song where they wrote a song about a girl going to Hollywood and like, win big, father's fallen angel, lose big, living out your life. And Guns N' Roses was like, you're in the jungle, baby. You're gonna die. And you got Slash and you got fucking Axl Rose. I mean, they were right there with their peers, but they were so far ahead. And I want to make this point before I go on, is that I've had this debate with multiple people that Guns N' Roses is a hair band, a la Bon Jovi, a la Poison, Slaughter, Dokken. Guns N' Roses is not a hair band. Guns N' Roses is a hard rock band in the lines of Metallica that transcends that hair band category. And that is everything. Oh, okay. That is everything I have, except for I do want to say that kind of a cool story is in 1992, I used to live in Gillette, Wyoming, and I went to see Guns N' Roses in concert in Spearfish, South Dakota. And the opening band was a little band that got booed off the stage. But my friend Jason Poole, that I went to the concert with, said, you know what? This band's going to be something. And he went to the merch. They got booed off the stage. And he went to the merch table and he bought a tape. And as far as I'm concerned, Jason Poole was the first person in the world to ever buy a tape from this band. And that band was Blind Melon. Yeah.
Wow.
That'd be a Blind Melon coming up.
Wow.
A little band.
Full
Wow.
circle, Blind Melon.
What a story.
Yeah.
What a story, Mark.
Wonder if he still has that tape.
He probably does. He's got like 4 kids now. Beautiful wife. I'm sitting at home playing Last of Us 2, drinking wine out of a glass that I got at Kmart, behind the paintings of
You got
other
2
people's
pools now.
backyards. Good
Yeah.
for you, Jason Poole.
Wow. And he has the tape.
So that's a solid. I think that's a very solid pick.
Me too. I couldn't agree more with you. And what really blew my mind early on is when he said, "Sweet Child of Mine is probably the best hard rock song ever recorded." And then he said, followed by Metallica's One. And that blew my mind because I think One is the zenith of all hard rock songs, metal hard rock songs ever recorded. It's a journey, you know what I mean? And like the first time I heard it, I was like scared and inspired, like all at the same time.
That's a great one. Is a terrifying song. I will.
Well, it was the video too, you know, of the guy in the hospital and like that whole imagery of it. Long before I was a filmmaker, it kind of resonated with me, and I was like, ugh, like, you know, I was like, this song's crazy. And then I think that's what did it for me. And I didn't go on to be a huge Metallica fan, so to speak, but I still think Injustice for All is their best album. So
Unfortunately, my introduction to Metallica was like the Napster era, and people just getting sued by them, so it wasn't a good start, and it sucks.
yeah, Lars was like one of the first people who actually like went after people. Him and Dr. Dre like went after everybody.
You know,
I thought you were gonna say your introduction to the Metallica era was you getting sued by Lars.
He had a Boston Metallica cover band.
I did get a warning letter once from Comcast, which is basically Spectrum up there, for downloading a television episode. But no, I couldn't believe how much stuff my older brother was just downloading stuff left, like just hard drives worth of stuff, and never got in trouble. But
what is all your guys' opinions of Guns N' Roses?
I think they're great.
I like them. I don't think I would like. I would like to see them live, but I'm not going to drop $250 for a ticket.
Right.
I would like to see them live, like in the '80s, like early '90s, of course. But
I will
if they're
say
on the
that
radio, I'm not shutting it off, or I'm not going to like.
yeah, denounce them.
most interesting stutter in a song, having instead of na 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 knees, adding a sh in front of it for no reason. He's got schnees, apparently. He's the only man on earth with schnees.
Mm-hmm.
Hey, Mike, baby. I'm gonna give you this. I think maybe only the likes of maybe 10 and Verses, and then Nevermind and In Utero. Has there ever been a 1-2 punch in hard rock like you Appetite and then Use Your Illusions? So for someone's career, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like I don't think there's ever been, like, they're eating today off 2 albums. And then the EP that had Patience on it, you know, like it's crazy.
I agree with you in that we said in a previous episode that I agree that 10 and Verses are probably the 2 greatest albums ever released back to back, but I don't think they permeated the mainstream quite like Use Your Illusion 1 and 2 did.
Oh, at the time, no, you're right. Guns N' Roses was like epically large, and like nothing could stop them there for that 5 years, you know, except themselves, of course.
right.
Drugs.
That's part of the other thing is like Guns N' Roses had a pretty interesting like mystique about them because they like disappeared off the face of the earth for so long, but they were still huge.
Yeah.
Like, how do you do that?
Yep. Well, you make a lot of money in 5 years.
Right.
Go to rehab and not talk to each other.
I know we have an extra guest and I know we have to move on, but I want to ask you guys a quick Guns N' Roses question before we move on. I want to ask you guys about the ubiquity of the Guns N' Roses mirror that you win at a carnival for throwing darts into balloons. Is this a phenomenon that you guys are familiar with? Like every time we would have a county fair, there would be that one game where if you can throw a dart into a balloon and pop it, you win a Guns N' Roses mirror. Are you guys familiar with that, or is that just me?
I think that's just you.
Okay, all right.
I have a vague idea of what you're talking about. I feel like I haven't. I feel like I might have seen that in the like mid '90s, but I don't remember seeing it since then.
Yeah, that's some Gaston County stuff, Mike.
Okay. If you're listening to this podcast and you're familiar with the Guns N' Roses mirror that you would win at a state fair for
Send him
throwing a
one.
ping pong ball into a goldfish bowl, leave a comment. Anyway, that's all I've got. Guns N' Roses is my pick for
Thank you,
greatest
Mike Baby. That was great.
Yeah, solid pick.
Solid pick. Who's up next?
I am.
Mr.
And
G.
I'm taking the Mike Baby route where I'm coming to the table with 3 options.
Oh no!
But it's really quick. So like I had 3 of them, and I started with the Beach Boys mainly because sentimental reasons. Growing up with them with my father and the record player, listening to Beach Boys albums, listening to them in the car, living on the water, all that stuff. It just
That's
completely reminds me of that.
powerful. Mhm.
That's more
Yeah.
personal side of things. And then like I've seen Brian Wilson in concert. It was awesome to see like the Beach Boys perform. Granted, it wasn't like the full original band or anything remotely near that, but also it was very sad because Brian Wilson he's not in the greatest shape to be touring.
Yeah.
So then I eliminated them, and then I got stuck on something we talked about in the text. How do you decipher between a band versus solo projects or
Yeah.
one-off bands? Because Tom Petty's had quite a handful. So I love Tom Petty, and the Heartbreakers are great, but now which kicked me into my next phase of how do I determine who I pick. So I cut off a lot of bands by just saying bands that are still active. So my pick for greatest American rock band is still active, and it's somebody I've seen a handful of times. They've been playing nonstop in the garage for me whenever I'm working, at work, everywhere. Pearl Jam, and I've grown into liking them more so over the past 5 years. I don't know if it's an age thing. I think when they first came out and broke it pretty big, I was still young. My sister was into them. I just blew it off, but as I get older, I realize that they are really, really great. And the 2 albums you mentioned earlier are great.
Yep.
No Code is my hands down favorite.
Okay.
That's such a great pick. I think.
And I also try to take in like the live performances. Like I get really excited if I know I can go see them because they put on a show that's
Yep.
unbelievable. And the talent alone from the whole band is just incredible.
Yeah.
Lyrics wise, they're amazing. They can rip you apart like emotionally in like 30 seconds. Like there's that song Just Breathe that we mentioned in a couple podcasts. That song is
It's epic.
brutal.
It's brutal.
It is something else, but man, you get like one of the running jokes is like we listened to No Code once at Woods of Old, and that first opening song is just so like chill and calming, and then track number 2 just like bam, crazy guitar riffs, and then John's always just like, they just want you to know that they're still Pearl Jam. Like they still want you to know that they can still rock.
Yeah.
Still, yeah.
And they're just, I mean, they could still sell out arenas and stadiums.
Yep. Oh yeah. Definitely.
So
I think you. Good.
no, I'm good.
I think you said something really interesting in that they wrote songs that really resonate with you. But that's interesting to me because they did that when I was 15, and now they're still doing it. And I think very few bands fall under that umbrella.
Yeah.
Even his solo stuff is great. He did that soundtrack for Into the Wild.
Love it. Love it.
Great. It's so good.
Very good.
Yeah.
God damn, I should have went with Pearl Jam.
And then like his ukulele song collection is great.
And the fact that they do a live show, they'll play for 3 hours because they can in every song.
You guys all went to it. The one where Mike Baby was at a bar during the whole show, right? I wasn't there, but I've been regaled in the tale.
I mean, like we walked in
a legendary story.
So y'all all got together, bought Pearl Jam tickets, minus Mike Baby,
It was
at
John,
the
Mike.
last minute, Mike
Yeah.
decided to go to try to get a ticket, right?
No. I didn't decide to go to get a ticket. I just decided to go.
Right.
Okay.
I think it was for John's birthday or something, and we drove
Yeah.
to Columbia, South Carolina. They were playing in one of those arenas, and Mike wasn't quick enough to respond to the tickets because I was literally buying them. I'm like, Mike, are you in? And then he said,
Yeah.
no, it's too late. And then he's like, I'll just get one later. I was like, I don't know if that's how it works. But then he went regardless and hung out in town with the townies. But
Yep.
yeah, that was even that show. Like,
So I was hanging out and you guys were at the concert. And
how
you guys sent
awful.
me a text. You guys sent me a text. It was like, all right, come meet us at the bar. And I'm like, nah, man, I'm going back to the hotel.
And Mike's like, I've been at a bar for 3.5 hours plus an encore.
It was a nice hotel. They had a sweet continental breakfast. Oh man, I'd shout down that next morning.
So
but
Mike,
like that, and even that show, like with their set list too, like we walked in a little bit late, maybe into the second song or end of the first song. And like I remember John just like freaking out, like they're playing verses in full. Or was it verses or no code?
it was verses. Yeah, it was verses because we came in on the second song. I wasn't sure what they had played before. We didn't even know it was the second song. We just knew
Right.
they started.
Yeah.
So then like they played 2 songs from verses in a row. It's like, okay, well, we'll see what the next one will be. And then there was another one from verses, so then once you get 3 or 4 in a row, it's like, oh, okay, they're playing the album. It took a minute to know for sure.
That's so sick.
That album is so good, man.
So
Versus
good.
Versus is the most solid 10 out of 10 that you're gonna find.
And at the time, Versus was the fastest selling album ever.
Really?
Wow.
Yep, the fastest platinum selling album ever. It did it in like not even a week, I think.
Wow.
Which back in those days, without internet and you had to physically get out of your house and physically buy the record, that was incredible.
Your dad drive you to the Rock
Tower
Hill
Records.
Galleria.
And Eddie Vedder's even like he's a good dude. Like he fought with Ticketmaster pretty hard, and
Yep.
Yeah.
And made sure that their tickets weren't outrageous there for a while.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Greg, did you ever
He's a good guy.
Did you ever get down with the Pearl Jam song Future Days from the hit video game Last of Us 2?
No, I didn't. I haven't.
We're not
No.
sponsored by Last of Us 2, by the way.
yeah, sure.
It's an amazing. What'd you say?
We're not sponsored by The Last of Us 2.
No, Future Days. This is an amazing song by Pearl Jam.
And like even like when I know there's an album coming out, like the past few years, they've released 2. The new one, like Gigaton, and
I
there was
think
one
they've released 2 probably in the past 6 years,
Right.
maybe a
like
little more.
it's a band. They're like it's like all right, I'm excited. Like I want to hear what they're doing, and I was
Because
very-
they don't have to make music.
No,
That's
they
the
don't.
thing. Yeah.
Yeah, or
So-
actually, it might be even. They might have taken like a 6-year break actually before
Oh,
they
wow.
released their newest. It was a really long. Yeah, there was a
You're
long
right.
break.
Yeah.
But like one thing with Pearl Jam that I feel like gives them the credibility to be on the list of the greatest American rock bands is I don't think there's many other or maybe even any other bands with the kind of longevity that they've had and with the consistency
Yep.
along the way. So,
Mhm.
we're talking about coming up on like maybe 30 years of them being a band and having never really put out like a bad album. Maybe there's, it's a little bit of highs and lows, but consistently solid records.
That's hard to do.
It's
The only argument I would present is Dave Matthews Band, if that's your thing. If you're
Mhm.
into that kind of music.
We'll take personal preference out of it.
I'm not
Oh,
a Dave
sure.
Matthews guy. I'm just saying I know a lot of people.
No, I'm saying if you did.
Right.
Yeah.
Gotcha.
If you get a band like Dave Matthews, they don't need to put out music. They could just tour, and they do. Every
Right.
year, they just summer tour,
Um,
pavilions, and just sell out every show.
yeah, at Woods of Old, I think it was 2 years ago, Adam and I were talking about Dave Matthews Band because we had both liked this new single that they put out, and we were talking about it.
Cop.
Yes, it's probably their greatest song. But
What is
anyway,
it? What is it called?
The song is called Samurai Cop, which is an amazing name for a song.
yeah, it is. But
Or a
there is,
profession. It's also
we-
an amazing name for a profession.
we looked it up. And Dave Matthews, no band since 1990 has sold more tickets to shows than Dave Matthews Band.
I believe that 100%.
Yep, they beat Fish. They beat everybody. Like everybody who's touring since 1990.
I mean,
They've
senior
sold
year in
more
high
tickets.
school was like 90, 98, 99 for me. And they were doing like 4 or 5 night runs at the Garden.
Yeah,
Selling out every-
Oh.
yeah. They were killing it at their live show. I mean, that's their moneymaker for sure.
That's the Ants marching days.
Yep. And I think Fish had more dates, but Dave had more tickets sold. So
Right.
more people came to the shows,
But like every year, I know every summer when they announce like Dave Matthews' new summer date, it's like, well, they're gonna play in Charlotte, they're gonna play at that big fucking outdoor pavilion, and that's all they do. And
That's all they do.
I mean, good for them. It's great.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
not a bad way to make a living if you can do it.
No.
Yep.
And even if they put out like new music, it doesn't have to be good because they have fucking 2 decades worth of hits they could play.
Yep.
To appease the fans.
Yep. Absolutely. Yep. They have a catalog that they can keep recycling. Well, who's next?
You.
You're up. You're up.
Me. Oh my God.
Real quick before you go, I just want to chime in regarding not a bad way to make a living. I want to add to that writing websites.
That's also not a bad way.
So very good.
Not a sponsor.
It's almost as good as doing massive stadium tours every summer.
Right now, Dave Matthews
yeah.
Band.
It's close.
Right now, Dave Matthews Band is on a Zoom call talking about their favorite website writers.
It's a compromise.
Have you guys seen that digital bank? Fucking hell! Who's?
Hey, in an alternate universe, it could be.
Maybe they'll write a
Don't
song
say the
about it.
name. Don't say the name. Anyway, go
Oh
ahead.
my God. All right, man.
Dave
Thanks.
Matthews podcast. You've got to see this website.
This has turned into the Dave Matthews.
You
Yeah.
gotta scroll it.
Well, first of all, thank you guys for letting me be on the podcast. Like I said earlier, I love y'all's show, and I love the ideas of just putting out hypothetical questions that aren't no answers ever really right or wrong. So just talking about it with your friends is pretty much the meat and potatoes here, and that's what I like about it. So
One of my favorite
Props.
things, the meat and potatoes.
it is the meat and potatoes. I thought about this for a while. I mean, I have an all-time favorite band who happens to be from America, but due to this experiment, I kind of thought about it deeper and was like, who's the other bands from America that even could be on this list? And my criteria came down to longevity, because as great as Guns N' Roses were, what if they were together for 25 years, critical acclaim, because even though I don't believe critics, you have to put some validity into media at some point. And then success, because you can be cool and underground all you want, but you can't be the greatest at anything unless you're retired because of your music. And I also put influence, and influence is probably the number one thing with my answer, because it spawned not only a bunch of inspiration for bands and artists, but it spawned sort of a genre. And my greatest band from America is REM. I was in my buddy Adam's room when I was younger, and his buddy was over, and they were playing a tape. And I was like, damn, it's a good band. Like, what is this? And they said, oh, it's REM. I was like, cool. I was like, oh, great. And so I went out and bought Green, that was in 1988.
Yep.
So to my chagrin, I didn't know that they had already been a band for 8 years. So back then, word traveled really slowly about bands, especially if you lived in Charlotte. You didn't hear about everything. But I thought about a lot of other bands that I want to give a quick honorable mention to. Aerosmith, they've just been around so long. People like the Ramones, Green Day, Metallica, Beach Boys, The Doors. There's just so many great bands. I even have Death Cab on there because I think of a modern band, they're one of the most consistent bands. So anyway, REM. So REM became a band in 1980 in Athens, Georgia. Michael Stipe went into the only record store in town, and Peter Buck, their guitarist, worked there. And they got a friendship going and started playing music. Their career is pretty much broken down into 3 categories, in my opinion. The IRS years, which was their first record label, their mainstream success, and then like their activism success and their ultimate breakup. And y'all with me? Sorry.
Oh yeah.
No, I'm with you, man.
Yeah.
All right.
Totally.
In 1981, they recorded their first single, which is Radio Free Europe, and they actually recorded it in Winston-Salem, North Carolina.
Oh, nice. I didn't know that.
Yep, because
They're from Athens, Georgia, right?
yep. And their
My
first
second favorite Athens.
their first producer's name was Mitch Easter, and
It's my second favorite Easter.
it's my second favorite one. But they hooked up with him and they made a little demo. They actually pressed up 1,000 of them and got rid of them in like days. And they made the mistake of not putting any contact information on those first pressings. And they still sold another 6,000 of these little demos, just due to the buzz it was causing around Georgia and Athens. Very early on, they turned down a couple major labels and stuck with this IRS Records. Their debut was Murmur in 1983, which is still one of my favorite albums of all time. It won, still, while no one's heard of this band, mind you, like no one's heard of REM at this point, only a few select few, and Rolling Stone selected it over Thriller as the album of the year.
Wow. Is that for real?
Yeah. Yep. And
Nobody knew what it was when they did that, right? Like,
right.
Thriller is
Everybody
an
was like,
amazing album. Thriller is
Yeah.
an amazing album.
so a respected rag like Rolling Stone declaring some band no one's ever heard of from Georgia who plays like country rock alt music, you know, that they were like, what is this? So it still didn't kickstart their career, believe it or not. They went on to release Reckoning in 84, Fables of the Reconstruction in 85, Life's Risk Pageant in 86, Document in 87, and Green in 88. So from 83 to 88, they released a major album every year.
Wasn't Reckoning filmed or recorded in Charlotte?
A couple songs were recorded at Studio B, which is no longer there.
Yeah, they tore it down. It was right where Joe used to live.
So that was their early years. After Document in 87, they started kind of reevaluating their careers and taking on what could be a major label turn. They had a lot of suitors, and Warner Brothers won the REM race in 1988, signing them to a multiple album deal. And then they released Green that same year, which is sort of like one of their hit albums that had Stand on it. And anyway, that was like a successful album for them, which in a way, 8 years after starting a band, they finally had the outlet for like everybody to know who they were.
I had a big crush on one of the girls in the Stand video. I can't remember which one. Yeah, I had a huge crush on about the time that video came out. Janie's Got a Gun came out as well, and I had a huge crush on Janie. Got a Gun video.
That didn't work out too well for Janie, did it?
I also had a bit, also directed by David Fincher, by the way.
It was. I knew that. Yeah. Janie's Got a Gun. It was a pretty epic video, actually.
Yeah, it was a good video. I had no idea he did that.
So I had a huge crush on Janie, but also back to your thing though, I had a huge crush on one of the girls in the Stand video.
I think I know what you're talking about.
I can't remember which one it is, so I'm going to go back and watch the video
Watch
after
that
again. And then I'll text you a picture.
And
We can put it on the Instagram.
Ironically enough, there's a story out there that when they first signed with Warner Brothers, Warner was trying to get Michael Stipe, their singer, to be more clear about his words and like sort of try to craft the band a little bit more than they were used to on this independent label. And they wanted some feel-good songs, and they jokingly wrote Stand. and turned it in with their song list for Green, and the label loved it. So they just shrugged it off and put it on the album. Fun factoid. After that, they took a couple years to kind of hone what would be their probably best 1-2 punch since Murmur and Reckoning, and that is Out of Time in 91 and Automatic for the People in 92,
So
which is probably my favorite REM album, Automatic. Out of Time brought the hit Losing My Religion, which most people, you know, is stapled to the band forever, and that's not to diminish it or to make it better.
Well, like, I don't think a lot of people knew at that point. I know I didn't. I had no idea that they had been a band for 10 years.
Right.
You know, they were a new band to me when I heard Losing My Religion.
Yeah, I sort of mentioned this in a past episode, but I think U2 and REM are the same bands for me in the sense that they were very popular in 1988. And that's kind of was their breakout, but there was so many, their best work was before that. Later. So many people hadn't heard. And so it sort of resurfaced after that.
So real quick, I think the run from Murmur in 83 to Automatic for the People in 92, in my personal opinion, is the greatest run of albums in US history in any genre. Up there with any band I can really think of, and that's just my belief. So despite critical acclaim, they were just, like I said, they were without a hit, and they finally had a hit. The first time they charted was The One I Love, and that was like literally 7 years after they became a band. So that's just wild to me. Most bands now come out and they blow up. Their first 2 albums are like blow up, and then they phase out a little bit, you know, as time goes on. And it's just weird to see a trajectory in music where someone starts off so slow for so long and then climbs this huge mountain. So they decided to leave our IRS and go with Warner's. They switched producers to Scott Litt, who was young at the time, but went on to mix In Utero and work with Hole and Incubus and Get Up Kids and New Order. This producer really was like attached at the hip to REM after they got on Warner. So blah, blah, blah. Now this is almost one of the funnest factoids about REM. In 96, mind you, after all of these amazing albums, the best material they ever wrote, in an effort to keep REM, Warner Brothers paid $80 million to sign REM for the rest of their careers. Wow. At the time, it was the largest record contract ever recorded.
Wow.
It beat out Janet Jackson, Madonna, and Rolling Stones deals.
Oh my God.
So this is a little old band from Athens, Georgia, you know, who stuck with it, wrote the music they wanted to write, never was told how to be a band, and they got $80 million to stay with Warner.
God.
So,
and I don't want to do a spoiler here, but didn't they only put out like 2 or 3 more albums after that?
4.
Okay.
Yeah.
They got $80 million to make 4 records.
The best $20 million records you've ever had.
Yeah, well, Adam and I were talking about this months ago, and he just shook his head because we looked it up together, and he said, yeah, well, he goes, most labels won't give you $5,000 to make an album today. And he's like,
that's about what I'm averaging. That's about what I'm averaging on my albums.
So anyway, let me move on. So
before you move on, I just want to say in 1996, they put out an album called New Adventures in Hi-Fi. And
absolutely.
One of my favorite REM songs is called How the West Was Won and Where
That's
It Got.
Beautiful. That's an amazing song. It is.
That's a deep cut.
That is actually in the pantheon of their catalog. That is a deep cut, Mike Baby. There you
go.
So let's fast forward a little bit. Of course, like John referenced, they got this big deal and pretty much made 5 more records. Up, Accelerate, New Adventures in Hi-Fi, Reveal, and collapsed into now. Drummer Bill Berry had a brain aneurysm during a show in 97 when they were in Sweden, and he made a full recovery but left the band and retired. And
I didn't know that. I knew he retired. I didn't know it was because of an aneurysm.
Yep, he left the band. Just they actually cleared him to keep playing, but he was like, it's not worth it being away from my family, and he had plenty of money at that point. So
Right. Well, he had to cut of that $80 million.
yeah. So and let's fast forward though. They broke up. Well, REM went on to make their last few albums with a different drummer, and critically and like sales wise, those albums didn't do too great, and that's why I can't bring them up in the greatest catalogs. That's what snags them up for greatest catalog is some of their later stuff. Let's fast forward though. I'll wrap up. In 2006, REM was nominated for the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame with the first year of eligibility. They were inducted, and Eddie Vedder asked if he could induct them. So he not only performed with them that night, he gave the speech before the band came out. He talked about how REM was the single most influence in his kind of coming to grips with his style of music he liked, and he felt it spoke to him since his childhood. So he emphatically wanted to be the one who inducted him in. A lot of people compare the early REM plight to the Smiths because of sort of like the jangly, clean guitars. Johnny Marr, the guitarist for the Smiths, was once quoted saying, "REM was our counterpart that we never grew to be."
Wow.
I thought that was kind of interesting, knowing the Smiths were really only together for a few years, and gave us all that great material, but only in a real short time period. Summing it up, they were a band from 1980 to 2011. They've sold over 85 million records. They have 15 albums, uncountable awards. And I did a quick Google search of bands who've publicly cited that REM was a main influence to them. And here's just honestly like a short list of these people citing REM as like one of the reasons why they make music. So bear with me. Eddie Vedder, Kurt Cobain, Tom York of Radiohead, Chris Carrabba, Darius Rucker, Jeff Tweedy from Wilco, The National, Arcade Fire, Alice in Chains, Billy Corgan, Axl Rose, Ben Gibbard, Jim Adkins from Jimmy Eat World, and there's just so much more.
Yeah.
Cobain, who hated the music business, right? Like Kurt kind of had this angst toward the music business and like people telling you how to create your art, Well, underneath REM's careers and Nirvana's careers, Kurt and Michael Stipe actually were friends. And every time Kurt needed advice about the industry or just some personal matters, he actually reached out to Michael a lot. Kurt was once being interviewed by Rolling Stones and was asked about his relationship with REM and how he was so tight with such a mainstream operation, And Kurt said, "Well, I don't know how the hell that band does what they do. God, they're the greatest band. They've dealt with their success like saints and deliver great music with no apology to anyone." So that's Kurt Cobain's words.
Yeah.
A little bit before Kurt's death, Michael knew that Kurt was on heroin and having some issues, mental issues, and Michael actually reached out to Scott Litt, who mixed In Utero, and booked some studio time for Kurt in Georgia, and had prepared for Kurt to fly to Georgia and spend some time there. And Michael was just going to kind of put him up and get him away from his marriage troubles and like the stuff he was going through. And he died before he ever could go to Georgia to hang with.
Yeah, and they were gonna work on music together, right? Not just like
yeah. the story, I don't know too much deeper, but from what I read, like Michael was going to help Kurt write some songs, not necessarily perform them with him, but
Right, just kind of
put him in a healthy environment, because you know.
Yeah.
And one quick story that I'll add to my REM thing is a Taking Back Sunday thing that Adam said that they were on a show, a late night show or some kind of show, and Michael Stipe was actually the guest, and Taking Back Sunday was the musical guest, and they left Michael like a really nice bottle of vodka, but he had just stopped drinking, and he gave the bottle to Adam and the band. So
Oh, nice.
so when I spew on about REM around Adam, he's like, okay, dude, look.
That was a really good Adam impression.
Shut up. Oh, I wasn't trying to.
Okay, dude, look. Michael Stipe gave me some vodka, and my Charlotte friends do a podcast.
He's like, look, man. Yeah. He's like, Michael Stipe got me vodka, and these four guys, you know, they shitted on Shamus and me. Okay. No,
That's awesome.
I
hope you never drink that. I hope you never drink that.
Yeah, I wonder where that bottle of vodka ever went, but
it went into his tummy.
I didn't get the rest of the story though, but that would have been cool to even meet Michael.